Okay, well, I want to welcome everyone. We have almost 300 folks on this Zoom call. And before we get to the main event, I do want to congratulate all of you for navigating so successfully and so beautifully a very challenging academic year. I doubt that BSU in its 181-year history has ever had to overcome more difficulty than what we together overcame in these past 15 months. So let me just say, well done, and a heartfelt thank you to every single person on these Zoom squares and beyond. We'll reconvene again as a town meeting later in June. So before I get to the main event here, I do want to just let you know that at the next town meeting, we will, as we normally do in June, talk about enrollment. We'll talk about retention, where we are with our budget for FY22. Staffing, I know, is a big issue. Safe return planning, especially in light of the governor's really remarkable and welcome announcement yesterday. I know there were questions regarding telecommuting and obviously the public health protocols. Those are all top of mind for the fall. I do want to let you know that we are on track within our planning assumptions, with only really one significant area of concern in those subject areas, and that is our undergraduate build credits. Right at the moment, we're down 14% year over year, and that is causing a significant budget deficit for FY22, which begins in July. We're not ringing the alarm bells just yet. We saw something similar a year ago, something similar as we were heading into last fall. This is a little bigger than what those inputs were at that time, but we'll work really hard over the next month to close that gap, hopefully through thoughtful interventions in June. And again, we'll reconvene next month to talk about exactly where we are in all of those issues. But today's meeting has a singular focus, and that is the release of the recommendations of the Special Presidential Task Force on Racial Justice, which you'll all remember was organized following the murder of George Floyd, which was almost a year ago next week. The task force has worked very, very hard over the past 1 year. And at the outset, I want to thank all of the members of the task force and its leaders and our committee chairs and the 1,000 people across this campus that had input in regards to what these recommendations turned out to be today. I will remind everyone, as I did in the email that I sent out yesterday, that these recommendations build on an already solid foundation of work undertaken by this campus over the past 20 years. Bridgewater is already seen across the Commonwealth as a leader in racial justice and equity practices. But after carefully listening to our Alana students over the past year, I hope you agree with me that we all have come to realize as a university and maybe as individuals that we can do better. And that's why the task force was formed. And that's why we're all here today. As I said, I do want to thank our co-chairs, Trustee David Alexander, Faculty Emerita, Dr. Carolyn Petrosino, and our Senior Fellow for Civics and Social Justice, Dr. Mary Grant, who, as I hope all of you know, is the President-elect of Massachusetts College of Art and Design. And Mary, we thank you so sincerely and deeply for all of the good work that you've done here at Bridgewater State University. Don't take all of our good ideas to Mass Art, but you can take some of them, that's fine. And I do want to thank you, Mary, for your leadership with David and Carolyn. I know that you got together every single Tuesday for a year, Tuesdays with Mary. Hopefully we'll have a better outcome than Tuesdays with Maury, but I know it already has. Our vice chairs worked hard, our committee leaders worked hard, the 70 members of the task force worked so hard, and again, the 1,000 folks across campus that all leaned into this important work. So we look forward to the recommendations. And with that, happy to introduce Dr. Mary Grant. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Fred, and truly appreciate your leadership on this and your trust and turning this over to your campus to do this examination. As we walk through today's report, the purpose of it is to catch the campus up on what you're going to have an opportunity to read and review. There are 441 pages in which we encourage you to take that deep dive and spend the time with this report. But for today, it's sharing a bit about the process, sharing a bit about recommendations and findings, and hearing from some others who participated in this process along the way. So I want to begin as well by giving thanks, because as we looked at where we were last year following the murder of George Floyd, and where our campus came together to process this, listening to the voices of our students, we did so with the interest of ensuring that we were building upon the strong foundation to create that beloved community. So I just want to underscore President Clark's thanks, and I want to thank Trustee David Alexander, Dr. Carolyn Petrosino, the co-chairs that, as Fred said, since last August, every Tuesday morning, we were having coffee. So I'm going to miss their wisdom and their leadership and their friendship, but I thank them so much for all that they have done. I want to thank our vice chairs of this effort, Jakari Griffith, Sydney Marrow, Samantha Joseph, and Anna Rice. Congratulations to Anna, member of the class of 2021. And so Anna, you're going to go out and continue to make a tremendous difference, just as you have done here at BSU. The subcommittees we had 6 of them, and they were co-chaired. And I just want to give a shout out to the subcommittee co-chairs who really did such an incredible piece of work, knitting together the reports that came from each subcommittee. So many thanks to Diana Fox and Jenny Shanahan, Diane Bell and Jabril Solomon, Jabara Alabede and Joyce Rain Anderson, Sabrina Gentle Warrior and Emily Portello, Sydney Marrow and Michael King, and Brenda Molife was also in the mix as a co-chair before she went off to be interim president at Massasoit, and Pam Russell and Gabriela Rivera. Many thanks to all of them. And I want to thank Jill Beckwith, the Director of Operations at the Martin Richard Institute for Social Justice. Jill was the backbone of this operation. She put in countless hours to keep us on track, to ensure that we were doing our best quality work. So a tremendous thank you, Jill, for your great work on this and your leadership. And to Lisa Shaw and Isabel Bourget and the team at the MRISJ, my thanks to all of you. So we began this work making sure we were grounding them in our Bridgewater State University values, that we need to be sure that we are working as a caring community, that we are taking a stand against violence, and that we are working together. These are the values that were affirmed by the university in 2015. And when we took President Clark's charge to heart, that words alone are not enough, that we needed to be introspective and do that deep dive, to listen to one another, to thoughtfully develop recommendations, most importantly, to develop an action agenda. And what you will see in the report when you have the time to go through it in detail is this is a very comprehensive self-study. We held the mirror up and we looked at what we were doing, how we were doing it, what we were missing, and how we could do better. There are definitely things along the way that we missed, of course, but what we have is an opportunity to keep doing the continued learning. And we made sure we listened to President Clark seriously when he said, we must do better and we will do better. And just as a little bit of an aside, when President Clark said to me, as the daughter of an auto mechanic, I want you to look under the hood of the car. I took that quite seriously, and so did everybody else who worked on this process. And I'm just delighted to now turn this over to Dr. Carolyn Petrosino, who will walk us through how we structure the process and how we did our work. Carolyn?
Thank you, Mary, and good afternoon, everyone. So a bit about the focus of the task force. First, let me say that because President Clark's call to action was unmistakably clear, that is, to fully address the concerns raised by our students and others regarding the state of racial justice and equity at BSU, the task force was equally cognizant and appreciative of the gravity of this work. Knowing that this work could not possibly be done without the deep involvement of many others, equally determined, we knew that the focus of the task force had to be clear, easily understood, sound, and relevant. So the focus was structured in the form of the 2 questions that you see on the slide. What are those institutional elements that make up this campus in the form of policy, practice, and culture that may be deterring or delaying racial justice? And Having determined what those elements are, what are some recommendations to change, improve, or eliminate? In other words, to correct those conditions. The structure of these statements served us well in keeping us centered on our purpose as a working group. In regards to our guiding values, the tough work of looking for one's blemishes after being told by others that you clearly have them and that your blemishes may be impacting the quality of life of others requires one to be honest, truthful, empathetic, and caring, among other things. This may be a simple analogy, but it may be useful in explaining the role of the guiding values for the task force. As Mary mentioned earlier, recognizing the cumulative pains of racial injustice and how that reality challenges this campus's journey toward the beloved community requires mindfulness. Observing the values noted here helps us to be mindful, ever present of the effort to ensure that all who are part of this campus community experiences inclusion, acceptance, and dignity. This work was not a walk in the park for any of us. It was demanding of not only our minds, but also of our spirits and our hearts. These guiding values remind us all of what is at stake here and why it is important to continue the work. Not only did it sustain us during the season, but these values will also help us all at BSU to sustain the work going forward. Regarding the process, to address the focus of the task force, a rigorous self-study needed to ensue. What I wish to emphasize here, however, is our effort to create a logical and transparent format for the self-study process that flowed directly from the concerns expressed in the forums, the Amplify event, and the other primary sources of information. The work of the subcommittees was wide-ranging and proceeded from a focus on a more general question or questions to more granular ones as they emerged. But essentially, the general format included the primary research question, an effective approach to gathering data needed to answer the question, an analysis of data, the determination of findings, and suggested recommendations that were supported by the findings. This format enabled the subcommittees to work independently while consistently ensuring that their work reflected the concerns raised by our students and others. That was the rationale for the process, and it helped to achieve this final report. And now I want to turn this over to Jakar.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to thank you. I feel honored to participate in today's activity and share with you our insights that emerge from the very judicious work and comprehensive work of our Racial Justice Task Force. It's important to recognize that we began this work recognizing fully that our success would be dependent on the deep involvement of our many talented staff, students, and faculty across campus. So it was important for us to be as inclusive as possible and create a space that would allow as many people to participate in these efforts, both formally and informally. Our work, the work that is presented here, is a result of our community's selflessness, their commitment, and their willingness to share ideas, to be vulnerable, to engage one another with openness and authenticity. Key to this, however, was our devising a process that was credible. And that meant having a structure that was totally transparent, that involved give and take, that involved deep questioning, that involved revising assumptions, exploring unexamined areas across campus, going where the data led us. But more importantly, this also meant that we had to regularly update the broader campus community, who were also essential to this committee's undertaking. We discovered that as we shared information, that allowed us to deepen our abilities to connect to other members across campus who would on occasion share with us insights that we had not considered or offer questions for us to ponder. This deepened our reflective process and it allowed us to ask, where could we do better? What things were we getting right? Ultimately, the campus community became our thought partners. And it is because of their efforts, because of their commitment, because of their care that we are here today. Most importantly, no process is complete without a rigorous and objective approach to analysis, data gathering, and interpretation. Our truths are grounded in an empirical reality. We found data where it existed. We also identified instances where data should be had but did not exist. We use that data as a springboard for deeper reflection and deeper inquiry, but more importantly, to answer even tougher questions. This too was driven by traditional standards of research data analytic techniques, and when flattering and both unflattering results surfaced, we engaged them with an honest scrutiny and a level-headed self-examination, recognizing that we're trying to solve problems, we're trying to provide solutions, and we're trying to improve the student experience, the experience of faculty, the experience of staff across campus. This also meant that we met frequently and often. And as our chronology events indicates here, this is certainly a lot to take in. There was a lot of connecting. We had a total of 12 meetings, for example, with our initial gathering beginning in August of 2020. There were more than 20 campus committees that were involved in this activity. We presented to the board. We had certain town hall activities in February. And while this graphic is not meant to be picture perfect of how our community came together to answer these very tough questions, it does illustrate that we were very active and we had engaged in very vibrant discussions. And then there are the subcommittees, and we are certainly grateful for the students across campus who approached the university with various calls to action. And these themes that you see here represent our Racial Justice Task Force subcommittees. They came from multiple events, calls to action, ongoing discussions, students asking questions about how to make the campus a safer, more developmental space that was conducive for this learning. And these themes, these conversations gave rise to these really 6 important subcommittee areas. And here we see the culmination of all of our community's efforts across campus. This graphic at least intends to illustrate that we had 1 student on every subcommittee to make sure that the voice that was heard was of the students and was clear to all members. We had a formal call to all of MSCA soliciting and recruiting members for their involvement in this important work. We had all colleges and campuses nearly represented across all of the committee's activities to make sure that we were representative, more importantly, diverse. We spanned hierarchy, meaning that we had deans and faculty and staff and students alike working as one, treating one another as equals, working to effectively address this important opportunity to make our campus better. And more importantly, this also involved both the Board of Trustees and our many alumni partners who also frequently joined in meetings and offered perspectives about how we can grow, how we could address these very complicated issues, and how we could move forward as a campus community. This graphic does remind me a little bit of a Christmas tree, but this is intended to really show you that our efforts were far-reaching. And again, if you look at the color code patterns on the right, you see that it consisted of students, faculty, staff, alumni, and certainly external members who had a deep care and concern for our campus community. Went across colleges, certainly, but more importantly, we had new timers, we had old timers, we had tenured, we had untenured, we had alumni, we had community citizens, everyone coming together to work on this important work coming from all walks of life.
Yes, it's Dr. Kevin McGowan is now going to talk about the voices of students and where we gathered the inputs for going forward. Kevin?
Thank you, Mary, and it is my honor and privilege to be able to share a few insights related to student participation in this process. So I will not read all of these comments here, but you can read over them and get a sense of how important it was to have student voices throughout this entire process. And what this made me think of was the student groups of the 1960s that helped propel civil rights. So I'm thinking of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which of course was an outgrowth from the Southern Christian Leadership Conference led by Dr. King. So the students of the time felt that Dr. King and the elders were not moving fast enough. So the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was created to act as a catalyst to move things along a little faster. So I think of the BSU students who worked on this task force as a microcosm of that Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. I think of them as BSU's own Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And without their voices, the work would not have moved along as quickly as it did. So now I will share some reflections, brief reflections on my work with the task force, followed by Sydney Marrow, and we will end with Gabriela Rivera. So let me just give you a few of the insights that I gathered from working on the co-curricular curriculum subcommittee. So the first insight that I got was I used to be a proponent of just breaking down silos and barriers. So as I worked on this subcommittee, I started to think that we have our different silos, different committees, different departments, and it's okay to have those different committees, different departments, and different programs. So thinking about the silos, they just all need to be transparent, built out of glass, and there needs to be connections up and down those silos. So that was one of the major insights that I got from working with this interdisciplinary team of folks pushing racial justice forward. So before I turn it over to Sydney, I just want to leave you with a quote that I often refer to from my book here, Acts of Faith, Daily Meditations for People of Color, authored by Iyanla Vanzant. And I've had this book about 25 years. And this is one of my favorite quotes that helps me in my work with social justice and racial justice. Let not what you cannot do tear from your hands what you can, Ashanti proverb. Now I will turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Sydney Marrow.
Thank you, Kevin. Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to share that as the director of the Lewis and Gaines Center for Inclusion and Equity, or Legacy, I've always been committed to hearing and believing the voices of our students, and primarily because as far as I'm concerned, they're our clients. Their needs are unique to them, and collectively, they are the stewards of our future. So by allowing them to speak and be heard, not listened to, but heard, we have demonstrated the importance of what it means to be a member of this community, one student at a time. We must continue to uphold our values that we espouse on our website and in all of our marketing materials, and in every town hall meeting and gathering that we have, we reference them. So when we say that their success is tantamount to our success, then we have the obligation to be attentive and supportive, always advocating on their behalf. And we are by no means finished, and this is a great start. So it was an honor and a privilege to be part of this committee, and I am truly looking forward to what the future holds for us as a community. And with that, I will turn it over to Gabriella.
Thank you so much, Sydney. Beautiful words, just everybody. Thank you so much. A lot of what I'm going to say was mentioned earlier, but keep in mind, this is from a student perspective and what I've taken from this task force. The student voice was definitely by far one of the most crucial aspects of the task force. I mean, when the murder of George Floyd happened, it was not only awakening for our nation, but also for our campus community, and that we needed to acknowledge racial inequality on our campus. What truly amazed me was not only President Clark's amazing leadership, but how he listened to the students. He heard our call for action to end systemic racism and to become a more equitable community. All these issues, as mentioned, sprung from themes that emerged all last summer, including the forums, the Amplify event, even the powerful letter sent from some of our students and alums, demanding that we need to address these issues and to make sure that our campus becomes an equitable one. I understand how, as a student of color, a woman of color, how when some of these students said that they didn't feel that their voices were heard, I felt their pain, and I could recall some times where I felt like I was invisible on campus, especially towards the beginning of my time here because of my race. And when the task force was created, I had the honor of serving as a student representative and a co-chair for the 6th subcommittee under Pam Russell. I never thought I would have that opportunity to lead and work with staff, faculty, alum, but under Pam's guidance, and I really owe her a huge thank you because I don't know if I could have done it without her. She truly is amazing. She was passionate about the work. She was willing to listen, and she's just a remarkable woman, and I'm so happy I've got the chance to meet and work with her. If anything, if I were to take anything away from the experience and the work that I've done on the subcommittee, and the task force, it's made me a vocal leader. It's made me an even greater leader. It's made me even more passionate about racial justice, and wherever I go, I want to ensure the same amount of leadership and passion with this matter. And if there's one thing that I would love to see in the future, I would encourage everyone to take up on the mantle of racial justice. Please find a way to make an impact if you can. If you're passionate about something, if there's something you believe in, speak up, listen to each other, help someone out, just get involved. That's what I've been telling myself, especially ever since this. Get involved as much as you can, and so many doors will open along the way. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Gabriella. Really appreciate your words and your perspective. And thank you, Kevin and Sydney as well. So I'm going to very quickly just give you a run through of the architecture of the report so that when you take the time to go through it, you'll know exactly what you're getting. So it's a 441-page document. The first 61 pages or so are a concise executive summary. It shares with you process. It takes a look at each of the executive summaries of every one of the subcommittees. So there are 6 executive summaries for you to peruse through, which will give you a quick overview of their processes, their findings, recommendations that were made. And then there's also, Carolyn's going to talk a little bit more in a moment, but we put together a crosswalk that helps to identify where concerns may have been raised and where they show up in the report. So you will find that too. We've really tried to make it a document that's easy to digest, easy to understand, breaking it down. And in the back of the report, the exhibit section, you will find complete copies of every one of the subcommittee's reports, unedited. It is very important to the process. These subcommittees, please, I hope that you will take the time to dive into these reports thoroughly from beginning to end, because you will find that there's a richness in terms of the stories that were told, the way the process began, the way the committees thought about their work, the way they presented their findings, the things that surprised them along the way, the recommendations, the nuances, because these were examined from the broad perspective of each one of the subcommittees working on it. So please take the time to go through the report from beginning to end. And then again, because every time that I know that I look at this, I learn something new. I find something new. I find something encouraging. I find something that we need to focus on. But there's a rich array of information contained in this report from beginning to end. So please do take the time. It reflects nearly 10 months of intensive work from colleagues across the campus. In the very beginning of this, we were meeting almost every other week as a task force, and then the subcommittees put in countless hours assembling this information, answering questions, gathering data. And you will see at the front of the report, there's 2 pages of acknowledgements of thank yous to everyone who provided data, helped us chase down information, gave time for interviews or conversations. And if we missed anyone, a blanket thank you to everyone who contributed. But I just wanted to take a moment and orient you to what you will find when you have an opportunity to click on this report. We are working on making it meet accessibility standards, so it is visible and readable by all members of our communities. That will be about another week or so, because this is a dense, complex report. We want to be sure that we are following all of our standards around ADA compliance and accessibility. So more to come, and I want to thank the team in marketing and communications that is working diligently on that piece. I'm now going to turn it over to Carolyn Petrosino and David Alexander, who will begin to talk a little bit more about some of the recommendations. So Carolyn, to you, and then over to David. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to just kind of piggyback a little bit on what Mary just underscored about the enormity of this report. And I do want to emphasize one thing. It almost doesn't matter how many pages are in this report if it's not based on something that you can count on. And when I say count on, I mean the recommendations made are all substantiated by evidence, not opinion. So it's a remarkable report, but please don't lose sight of the fact that these recommendations are grounded in data and evidence. So as the slide title states, the 6 subcommittees put forward 73 recommendations for possible corrective actions for the president's consideration. This is a substantial number of outcomes reflecting an incredible amount of work done by our colleagues within a compressed time period. And as I said before, these recommendations are supported by evidence, by data, be it quantitative or qualitative. The recommendations are supported by survey data, existing statistical data, interview data, the forums, and other sources that reflect the voices of our students, focus group data, etc. Regardless of the form, the multiple data streams were analyzed by the subcommittee members and assessed accordingly. And the subcommittee members determined appropriate recommendations based on their findings. And so it is an amazing amount of substantive work, with all credit being given to the subcommittees and the subcommittee chairs for the remarkable task that they were able to undertake in addition to their other responsibilities as university citizens. This, as Jakari mentioned earlier, this looks like, he said, a Christmas tree. Sure. What it does is it represents, once again, a major amount of effort that was put forward to bring a connection between the recommendations and our students' voices. This slide is titled Connectedness to Student Voices. You will see, if you look at this, the color coding, that most of the recommendations for change incorporate and indeed honor the concerns expressed by our students. And of course, all of the recommendations will either directly or indirectly improve the BSU environment for students of color and in turn for all students. This slide, as impressive as it is just a small representation of the intensity of the work that took place on behalf of our students and for all of us. So there is much in this final report. Again, I echo Mary's comments, much in this final report. And I recommend that it be read from cover to cover by everyone. All of its content is relevant. All of it is important, and certainly all of it is necessary for growth and provides a well-defined and substantiated roadmap, if you will, to the future of Bridgewater. Now I'd like to turn this over to David.
This process of reviewing, analyzing, and respecting the data and the information that was provided at the scale it was certainly was an undertaking. What we have done as leadership of the board, and when I say leadership, I mean that all the way to all 70 people who showed up as leaders to the Racial Justice Task Force. But there are some recommendations that we'd like to highlight and underscore as it serves to really get at the heart of what our students and members of our community have pointed our eyes to with regards to how BSU could improve as a community. This slide here really focuses in on creating that a place for ongoing support. And so you will see that many of the idea is that we need to create a structure, a leadership structure, an accountability structure for the work that we've done within the task force itself, and how the task force transitions to an action force. And essentially that action force includes every member of the Bridgewater community. And looking towards that inclusion of everyone in the Bridgewater community, that starts with leadership at the top. How we provide a focus on racial justice, on equity, on inclusion at the highest levels of the BSU community. It really starts with how we structure the cabinet and how we structure the board committee process. So looking at those sub-organizations as opportunities to provide that umbrella of leadership with regards to a commitment to the Racial Justice Task Force, or the findings of the Racial Justice Task Force, was hugely important in this process. And as you can see in this slide, those particular recommendations, the first three, really point in that direction. Looking towards the representation and knowing and understanding that people of color not only add to the organization, but really are an essential part of moving Bridgewater forward as a unified community and being able to be responsive to the needs of today. So in that vein and in that light, what we're looking towards is not just a recruitment plan, because a recruitment plan would narrow you down into thinking like this is an HR function or this is pointed at HR. No, what we're talking about is something that includes recruitment, but really expands all the way out to an idea of how do we create a structure and a coordinated response, almost like a strategic outreach effort, to making sure that people of color are represented on campus from a leadership perspective, from a faculty and staff perspective, from a student perspective, and taking care and mentorship and cultivating long-standing relationships and just the environment for people to want to stay at BSU and to continue at BSU and to also thrive at BSU. So those are the aspects that are being paid attention to And that should be underscored with regards to this slide here. And this is a slide I was referring to before, looking towards those safe spaces and those really finding a way to gain support in the midst of a situation that questions whether or not someone's dignity has been transgressed, or some type of microaggression, or some type of situation in which an inequity is in place. Essentially, all those culture-based and leadership-based issues that come up that don't fall into the legal category of an equal opportunity situation or something of that nature. So essentially, it's taking care of all those different challenges that arise that require real attention and real faith and commitment to resolving the situation and creating the structures that do so. Particularly looking at how we create both formal paths and informal paths to really supporting individuals. And in the informal setting, being able to identify and know all the different groups and organizations that exist in and around campus that could provide support in just short of a formal process, and using technology to do so. So we're really leaning on the innovative practices and technology that's available to us, and the desire to be innovative as a BSU almost value. We hope to capitalize on that as a community.
Good afternoon, everyone. As a faculty member, I am grateful and proud to have been a part of the Police and Public Safety Committee of the Racial Justice Task Force. I have a lot of admiration for our students, staff, faculty who are dedicated for an enduring and positive change. And as an African-American female faculty member, this left me hopeful that BSU will continue to make progress towards making not only a welcoming, but also encouraging community for people from all walks of life. Thank you.
Hi, it's a pleasure to have the chance to talk to everybody, and it was a singular honor to have the chance to participate in this experience together. I could give you a dozen reasons, personal reasons why this was important. I could give you even more from a criminological perspective why this kind of endeavor is vital to the success of higher education, of the university and its role in the community. But at the end of the day, I think for me the single biggest part of this is that justice done properly is a gift of love, and it's clearly we have much work to do. But I have to admit, I believe in this place. I believe that we can achieve that. I think that what we could see in this process was that more than anything else, criminal justice particularly, but justice generally, is a gift that we give to each other. And this was both a project seeking to make that more true, but also itself a distillation of that very insight. And so I think that's what made this such a transformative and beautiful experience. And I'm really grateful for the chance to be part of this. And that's it.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have proudly worked at BSU for almost 30 years as a maintainer who is a Cape Verdean woman. And I feel it is important that people be treated equally. Working on the task force with my colleagues, I got to reconnect with people I already knew, and I got to meet new people. Our subcommittee work on creating a safe place for students and staff to address concern about racial justice issue that might affect our community in a negative way. Together, we strongly believe that positive attitude and behavior can lead to a more inclusive environment. I believe that a diverse workplace benefits everyone. It was a pleasure to be a member of this task force and to know that I am not alone in this work. I am confident that my subcommittee's hard work and thoughtful recommendation will create a bright future for our staff and the student that we serve. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I served as a student representative for the investing and supporting students. On campus, I have many hats. I was an orientation leader for 2 years, and I am also a resident assistant, so I work within RLH. And so I've had a lot of direct contact with students. In my experience from other students of color has been quite different. I feel as though I have had the opportunity to be able to take the reins and really flourish at BSU. And it hurts my heart when I'm talking to other residents in my building or other students in my grade or my class that haven't felt that way and that have had different experiences and that have really been struggling at BSU and feeling like they don't belong. And the simple reason for me is that I want everyone to feel like they belong and that they're supposed to be here and that BSU welcomes and invites them.
And now, as co-chairs, we had a unique vantage point. We got to see, the work of all the committees and all come to a singular place and a singular focus, and be able to think about what aspects that we thought might be useful to the university community. And looking towards that, we wanted to be direct and very specific. Calling on the Board of Trustees, the colleagues at the board, to really look towards having a special focus on equity, campus climate, and culture, and really focusing in on those issues by establishing a committee structure that will review that, support that, and support the BSU community and keeping us all accountable to that. Looking towards developing and implementing a program that really looks towards the furthering of the idea of inclusive leadership development, inclusive leadership education, and really providing the basis and the understanding around all the elements of how leadership intertwines with today's understanding of equity and inclusion altogether. So we really focused in and wanted to underscore that as co-chairs. And then looking towards the establishment of a university council to really provide that lateral review and understanding of where we are on a daily basis, and really understanding how BSU is positioned with regards to all of these issues, and really providing a lane for communication to leaders within the university, and really being a self-check and a self and really being self-reflective of BSU itself. And then, of course, a student advisory group that can meet with President Clark and really provide a direct assessment right from their voice, from their mouths, as to how we're doing with regards to this very important endeavor. And then looking towards other recommendations, really establishing the data train for making all of this happen. Being informed and having informed decision making is also a part of this piece. Data plays a huge role in this, and in having this data, not only being able to assess and see where we are, but to also be able to set new goals and new standards and new objectives based on that data. And then also to, of course, hold ourselves accountable in terms of measures of performance and looking at how we can continue to improve. And then, the word training is fairly ubiquitous all the way across the board, like making sure that we can provide real, reliable, and contemporary training and education and development throughout the entire BSU organization to really filter down to everyone who shows up on BSU's campus and in the efforts of BSU and making sure that they're well versed in all these areas. And then, of course, to continue to support all the communications efforts with regards to racial justice itself. To know that we are doing the work, to know that we're furthering in that work, and to know that we're holding ourselves accountable. It only multiplies everything that we had put forth in our values, in our core operating values of this task force back in the beginning of this presentation. So we would like to see that continue through on and continue on after we turn over as far as this task force is concerned. And then I'd like to invite Mary to come back and give us a few words.
Right. Thanks, David. And, there's, as we've just run through some of the top level recommendations. And when you have a chance to read the report, you will see that there are many more, but we wanted to pull out a few and highlight a few today. And these recommendations have been made to the president, who now, needs to sit and move forward on these. And you'll hear more on that in a bit, but I just want to thank you, David, for walking us through these. There's some rich, pragmatic steps there and much more to come. And it's going to take all of us, as Mingy said so beautifully. I'd now like to invite a couple of other members of the task force to say a few words about their experiences and some reflections. Joyce Rain Anderson, Diane Bell, and Anna Rice. So Joyce Rain, over to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Along with other faculty, I was elected to serve on the Racial Justice Task Force by the union. While it is clear that Bridgewater has responded to many issues of social justice and inequities and is willing to do more, many stories that I've heard over the years from students compelled me to step forward. I often tell students that I persisted in getting a doctorate to be able to work within the system. Relationality, responsibility, and accountability have been among my guiding principles, and reshaping the university has been among my goals since I decided to become part of the system, a system that is in dire need of changing if racial justice is to be attained. My Indigenous ancestors and relatives today have been the recipients of settler colonial violence that still persists and affects all people of color. Some people remain invisible in the grand narratives of justice, equity, founding, and more. It is for them that I do this work with a good heart. Serving on the Racial Justice Task Force and being co-chair of Subcommittee 3 with Dr. Jabbar Albadi presented an opportunity to reveal all the good work that has been done, to uncover the gaps, and to offer recommendations for what further work and changes are necessary. My gratitude to this subcommittee and all other members of the task force and those who have helped collect the data. My hopes are that this university takes bold steps to not only address racial justice and social justice through new programming, training, and curricular change, but to be seriously reflective of our own complicity in upholding policies and systems that privilege settler colonial logics. We must invite and infuse the many knowledges that have been dismissed as less than. We must break down the gatekeeping that supports colonial regimes that have oppressed many and privileged few. This is our opportunity to reshape our university and to be a leader in creating a truly just world. Katapatash.
I accepted the invitation to join the Racial Justice Task Force to be part of the solution. I consider myself a survivor of racial injustice as a first-gen woman of color who grew up in a low-income family on the south side of Chicago. I understand how these markers were used to discriminate against me and reduced my opportunities for advancement in the workplace. I was fortunate to serve as co-chair along with Dr. Jabril Solomon on the Workforce Subcommittee. What kept me focused on this work was the constant voice of our students saying, we want to see more faculty and administrators who look like us. Bringing diverse lessons into the classroom and having diverse perspectives at the table when important decisions are being made is so important to the fabric and growth of our university. The conversations in our subcommittee meetings about hiring practices were very powerful. They were raw, they were honest, and at times very difficult. But so is this work if you do it right. It forced our group to recognize the importance and value of diversity in the workplace. It also brought to light the additional responsibilities for those small numbers of faculty and staff of color on campus who are often called upon by our students of color for mentoring, for guidance, for counseling, and practically anything else as a way for us to support our students. In April, I met with a student to talk about internships, and we actually ended up talking about the Racial Justice Task Force. She asked me, is BSU really going to do something, or is this just all talk? It is my hope that we will immediately implement some of the recommendations that may challenge the way we've always done things, but I think it'll be for the better. Our BSU community deserves change, and we deserve that now. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I was extremely honored to have joined this task force as the student vice chair. I joined this work because since coming to BSU, I've always believed that the voices of the students are the most important voices on campus. I joined because injustices and inequities were affecting and had been affecting our Alana students. It was absolutely crucial that we make BSU the best possible place it can be in order to ensure that our students are safe, comfortable, and feel welcomed, or else they are not getting the education or experience that they deserve. And this was a very true reality for our students. As vice chair and a member of subcommittee for investing in and supporting students, I was able to provide student perspective where possible through my role as president of the student body, as well as take a step back and acknowledge that my personal experiences at BSU are not the same as our Alana students, and urging other members of the task force to hear their voices, which were always a priority and the reason we were there. I hope to see these recommendations fulfilled and upheld. Racial justice and equity is not something that we can just address for a moment, but must become part of the structure and foundation of our university. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Joyce Rang. Really powerful words. And as you can see, one of the graphics here is that we're climbing stairs and we have more work to do. So the process of the task force has finished. Thank you all so much. We wanted to share that with the community that gathered today to hear about it. We're disseminating and sharing the report, which is what this is about. We need time as a community, all of us, to review the report and determine next steps. And President Clark has a significant commitment to continuing this important work, and then ensuring that the work continues, that we're embedding it, that it's sustainable. We heard all of that from some of the reflections. And when I think about the words we just heard from our colleagues throughout this presentation, words such as love, hope, passion, empathy, inclusion, justice, equity, this values-driven work and coming together as a community provides the best opportunity for continuing to climb those stairs. And so as we think about the work ahead, it's going to take everybody putting shoulder to the wheel, climbing those stairs together, keeping the dialogue going, and making sure we're measuring progress as we proceed down this path or up these stairs together. And so to talk a little bit about some of what we may see next and the work ahead, I'm going to turn it over to our Provost Karim Ismaili. Karim?
Thank you, Mary. Good afternoon. I want to take this opportunity to thank Mary, David, Carolyn, and every member of the Racial Justice Task Force for delivering such a comprehensive, searching, and thoughtful report. I also want to publicly acknowledge and thank President Clark for his vision and leadership. Over the past year, the Division of Academic Affairs, working in partnership with the entire university, has engaged in deep dialogue and reflection on racial justice. Thanks to our community's commitment to equity and justice, we have held over 100 events demonstrating the very best of BSU. As a learning community, we have grown. New racial justice initiatives have been launched across all colleges, institutes, centers, and most academic departments and units. As stated by President Clark at the outset, these efforts build on and extend the work that has already been undertaken at the university. We have provided additional support to the Office of Teaching and Learning and the Center for the Advancement of Teaching and Scholarship, and will continue to provide resources to support racial justice and equity. Make no mistake, we have challenging work to do in relation to the core curriculum, diversifying our faculty, librarian staff, and administrative ranks, deepening our commitment to providing equitable and meaningful opportunities for our students, and ultimately doing all that we can to ensure that the recommendations of the task force are reflected in outcomes across the division. We have great momentum. We now have to hold ourselves accountable and make sure that we live up to our aspirations. I have every confidence that we will seize that opportunity. If we could move to the next slide. I want to let everyone know that you can get further information on the Racial Justice Task Force and racial justice at Bridgewater State University by going to www.bridgew.edu/racial justice. If you have any questions around the Racial Justice Task Force or racial justice in general, please send an email to rjtf@bridgew.edu. It is now my pleasure to invite President Clark to share his closing remarks and reflections. President Clark.
Grim, thank you very much. And as we wrap up, I do want to thank IT for helping us to come together in such a flawless way. We've really learned how to Zoom. And I also want to thank Kelly S. Salisbury in the President's office for her work in pulling us all together. Personally, I found the presentations to be inspiring and moving. And I want to, on behalf of the whole campus community, thank all of the presenters and all of the folks that had so much to do with the recommendations. This work is worth doing. It's worth doing. We heard from Gabriella. I can see you, Gabriella. We heard from Gabriella that just in doing this work and pulling together a group to take on a very difficult issue and a challenge, that Gabriella felt empowered, engaged, involved. I hope you felt heard and supported at the same time. That's the same opportunity that's available to all of our students in doing this work. I've also heard from participants of the task force along the way that even in engaging in this difficult work and having tough conversations, that coming together helped to build community. In a building community, we strengthened the community that we already have. That's the opportunity in this work and why the work is worth doing. I want to let everyone know, and thank you 300 people that are on this call for hanging in with us, that we're at the end of the beginning. It's the end of the beginning for this work. And this moment marks the next phase of our work, implementation. Our students said to me, and not just our students, but our students, faculty and staff, people in the community, that they're tired. They're tired of talk. They're tired of words, and that words alone are not enough. It's time for us to take action. Carolyn Petrosino said along the way that all this effort in developing recommendations is fine, but she challenged us with 2 words. Then what? Then what? So that's what's in front of us. And as a university, we have to be humble enough to know that we can improve. We can improve. And we have to be brave enough to actually make change. Joyce Rain Anderson just said it. We have to be bold in making that change, and we intend to be. It's up to all of us, not just me, not just the people on this call, every one of us on this campus community and in this region. It's up to all of us to turn words into action and then our actions into results. Dr. Petrosino also said and reminded us the work is not going to be easy. She said that this work is demanding of our minds, our spirits, and our hearts. She said that a little while ago. She's right. But the next phase of the work will be just as demanding, make no mistake. we will take the next steps to be bold and to take action. And those steps begin today with the rollout of the recommendations to the campus community. And as a reminder, tonight at 6 o'clock, we'll be meeting with our students and with many of our BSU alumni to share these recommendations as well. We also know, Mary said this, we have to take time to reflect on these recommendations. We have to be sure to honor the work that was done on these 441 pages, these thoughtful recommendations. We have to take time to live with them, to read them, to reflect on them, and we will. But we also want to take some immediate action. Diane Bell just challenged us, and I agree with her. So in mid-June, you will hear from me about some immediate next steps where we can take some immediate action, certainly to position the university so that we can begin to implement. And later in June, Trustee Alexander, along with our chair of our Board of Trustees, Jean Durgan, will be having a retreat at the board to talk about accountability and oversight mechanisms for me in the cabinet, but of the institution. We need our trustees to focus on this work as well. And personally, I welcome the accountability and the oversight that our Board of Trustees is already motivated to provide. There will be quite a bit of planning and conversation over the summer as we begin to pull together budgets, make personnel changes, and think about the training considerations as well. And yes, we didn't have time today, but we will leave room for conversation and for input from all of you and across this campus along the way. We all can have faith in the work of this task force. Michael DeValve said it. Justice is a gift that we give to each other and we give to ourselves. Now, why do I have faith? Because these recommendations come from our Bridgewater community and they're offered with sincere passion. And I'll say the word because it's an important word. They come with love for our great university and for our deserving students that we are privileged to serve. So in implementing these recommendations as we go forward, let's remember our motivation. Our motivation is to assist Bridgewater State University in achieving the full potential of our mission, and living up to our highest ideals as a caring, welcoming community within which every member feels a sense of belonging. Every member needs to feel that sense of belonging and that sense of love that we all have for each other and for this place. So let me say at the end, thank you, task force, presenters. Thank you, Bridgewater State University, for being honest with yourself and courageous enough to develop a roadmap for our future to make us a better institution. Please take time to rest, to rejuvenate, and reflect on what we've accomplished together over the past year and what we will accomplish together in the years ahead. So thank you all. And I want to wish you a very wonderful rest of the day, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks, everybody.